They've watched you for a long time. From the shadows, from the corners you don't check twice, from the spaces between moments when your guard slips and your doubts rise. They've studied you with ancient patience, these demons that haunt the edges of every human's existence. Some call them enemies, others name them fears. Many label them obstacles or challenges or problems. But the truth is deeper, more primal, more honest than those comfortable words we use to make the darkness seem less dark, the threats seem less threatening, the battles seem less deadly. They are demons, and they have hunted our kind since we first stood upright and dared to believe we could be more than what mere survival demanded of us. They know your weaknesses, your breaking points, your moments of surrender when the weight feels too heavy, the road too long, the pain too intense to bear another step, another day, another breath under the crushing pressure. They've circled you in your darkest hours, whispered that you aren't enough, aren't strong enough, aren't brave enough, aren't worthy enough of the victory that waits on the other side of the battle you're fighting. They've watched countless others break under these same whispers, seen millions surrender to these identical lies, witnessed the collapse of warriors who seemed unbeatable until that critical moment when doubt finally overcame resolve, and the demons rushed in for the kill they'd been so patiently awaiting. Yet something happened when they came for you. Something unexpected. Something that defied their ancient calculations and time-tested methods. Something that made these predators of human potential suddenly hesitate, suddenly reassess, suddenly question their certainty of another easy victory. They saw something in your eyes. Not just determination, though it was there. Not just courage, though it burned bright. Not just defiance, though it stood unmistakable. They saw something far more dangerous to their kind, far more threatening to their purpose, far more lethal to their power over the human spirit. They saw unshakable knowing. The kind that doesn't need to scream because it rests on bedrock too deep for volume to reach. The kind that doesn't need to boast because it's anchored in truth too solid for pride to move. The kind that doesn't need to convince others because it's rooted in certainty too absolute for doubt to touch. And in that moment, for the first time in their ancient existence, these demons felt something they'd never expected to feel when facing just another human. Fear, not of what you might do to them, but of what you've become despite everything they've done to you. Because here's what the demons suddenly recognized in your eyes, in your stance, in the very air around you that seemed to vibrate with quiet power they couldn't quite understand. You've alchemized your pain into strength so pure it almost glows. Every wound they inflicted, every loss they celebrated, every fall they engineered to break your spirit has been transformed through some mysterious inner fire into its opposite, into power, into wisdom, into unbreakable resolve that now feeds on the very challenges meant to starve it into submission. The demons don't understand this alchemy, cannot comprehend this transformation, don't recognize this mysterious process that turns the lead of suffering into the gold of unbreakable strength. And what beings cannot understand, they learn to fear. This is why they retreat when you advance now, why they step back when you step forward, why they hesitate when you commit, why they whisper when once they roared their threats and mockeries at your dreams, your efforts, your audacity to believe you could become more than your doubts insisted was possible. But make no mistake, their retreat is not surrender. Their fear is not defeat. Their hesitation is not abandonment of their ancient purpose to keep humans small, contained, and enslaved to comfortable limits that preserve the predictable order they've maintained for so long. They're merely regrouping, reassessing, recalculating their approach to this unexpected development in their carefully laid plans for your diminishment. They'll return with new disguises, with fresh strategies, with different voices singing the same old songs of doubt, of unworthiness, of the foolishness of believing you could rise beyond the comfortable mediocrity that claims so many. But something fundamental has changed in this eternal battle. Something has shifted in this ancient war between human potential and the forces that would contain it within safe, predictable, manageable boundaries. You know something now that can never be unknown again. You felt something that can never be unfelt. You've seen something that can never be unseen. You've discovered the force that makes demons retreat, the power that makes ancient enemies of human greatness step back and reassess their certainty of victory, the strength that transforms you from prey to equal in this struggle that defines so much of human existence. The question isn't whether you possess this force. The evidence stands clear in the very fact that you still stand at all after everything you've endured. The question is whether you'll fully claim what you've already proven is yours, whether you'll completely embrace what you've already demonstrated exists within you, whether you'll totally embody what you've already shown flows through you in those moments when surrender seems certain, yet somehow, against all odds, you found the strength for one more step, one more try, one more breath when breathing itself felt like an act of defiance against the crushing weight. This is the invitation hidden within the demon's retreat, the opportunity concealed in their fear of what they've seen in your eyes. The doorway revealed by their hesitation to approach with the same confident certainty that once accompanied their every advance against your dreams, your hopes, your belief in possibilities beyond their carefully maintained limitations. Will you accept this invitation? Step through this doorway? Seize this opportunity to become fully, completely, uncompromisingly what the demons already fear you might be becoming? The choice stands before you now, as it has always stood before those rare few who glimpse their true capabilities beyond the comfortable lies that keep most safely contained within the boundaries of the ordinary, the expected, the manageable middle that threatens nothing and changes nothing. To help you make this choice with clear eyes and full understanding of what's at stake, consider carefully what exactly the demons recognized in your eyes that caused their unexpected retreat from what they assumed would be an easy victory. They saw the four qualities that have always been lethal to their kind: their purpose, their power over human potential. First, they saw unborrowed conviction, not beliefs adopted from others, not confidence dependent on outside validation, not courage borrowed from temporary motivation or passing inspiration, but conviction born from your own experience, from your own battles, from your own discoveries, through direct confrontation with challenges that revealed capacities you never would have believed existed within. You had those very challenges, not forced their revelation. This unborrowed conviction terrifies the demons because it cannot be undermined by the opinions of others, cannot be shattered by temporary setbacks, cannot be eroded by changing circumstances or shifting fortunes that would destroy confidence built on any less solid foundation. It stands impervious to their most effective weapons: doubt, uncertainty, the fear of being wrong, or looking foolish for believing in possibilities beyond what others consider reasonable or realistic. Because your conviction no longer depends on outside confirmation, no longer requires external validation, no longer needs the agreement or approval of those who haven't seen what you've seen, felt what you've felt, discovered what you've discovered through your own direct experience of capacities beyond what you once believed possible. The demons can still whisper their doubts, can still question your path, can still mock your audacity to believe. But their whispers hold no power against conviction born from direct experience rather than adopted belief. Their questions find no purchase against knowing that stands on the solid ground of personal discovery rather than the shifting sands of borrowed confidence. Their mockery falls harmlessly against the armor of first-hand knowing that has replaced the vulnerable shield of second-hand believing. Second, they saw sovereignty reclaimed. This sovereignty shows in your posture, radiates from your movement, emanates from the very space you occupy in a way that changes the atmosphere around you. It's the natural authority of a being who has remembered that while external forces can influence your circumstances, they cannot determine your response. While outside pressures can affect your situation, they cannot decide your reaction. While environmental factors can impact your conditions, they cannot dictate your choices. This reclaimed sovereignty terrifies the demons because their primary strategy has always been to convince humans that they are victims of circumstances rather than creators of response. That they are subject to conditions rather than authors of reaction. That they are at the mercy of situations rather than choosers of meaning, direction, and purpose, regardless of what happens around them. When you reclaim the natural sovereignty that has always been your birthright, you shatter the most powerful spell the demons have cast upon humankind. The illusion that your internal state depends on external conditions, that your power depends on favorable circumstances, that your capacity for choice depends on acceptable options presented by a world that may or may not align with your preferences, your values, your deeper knowing of what's possible beyond the visible evidence of current reality. The demons can still create challenges, can still engineer obstacles, can still manufacture difficulties designed to convince you that sovereignty is an illusion when forces beyond your control seem to determine so much of what happens in your world. But these tactics lose their power against one who has reclaimed the unshakable truth that while you may not choose what happens to you, you always choose what happens in you. While you may not control what occurs around you, you always control what unfolds within you. While you may not determine the cards you're dealt, you always determine how you play the hand you hold. Third, they saw alchemical resilience. Not mere endurance, though you've demonstrated plenty. Not simple persistence, though you've proven capable. Not basic survival, though you've managed that against odds that would have broken many others. They saw something far more threatening to their purpose. The capacity to transform the very experiences meant to destroy you into the fuel that powers your continued growth, development, and expansion beyond the limitations. They've worked so hard to convince you are the boundaries of what's possible. This alchemical resilience terrifies the demons because it converts their primary weapons pain, loss, failure, setback, difficulty into the raw materials from which you forge greater strength, deeper wisdom, more unshakable resolve than would have been possible without the very challenges designed to break your spirit and crush your ambition to become more than their carefully maintained order can accommodate. It's one thing to endure their attacks. Many have managed this feat of basic survival against the forces aligned against human potential. It's quite another to transform these attacks into advantages, to convert these weapons into tools, to transmute these poisons into medicines that heal the very wounds they were meant to inflict, while simultaneously creating antibodies that make you increasingly immune to future attacks of the same kind. The demons can still inflict pain, can still engineer loss, can still arrange failure precisely calibrated to target your most vulnerable doubts and fragile hopes. But these strategies become increasingly counterproductive against one who has developed alchemical resilience, who has learned to extract the gift hidden within every wound, who has mastered the art of transforming stumbling blocks into stepping stones through the mysterious inner alchemy that the demons themselves unintentionally taught you through their relentless efforts to break what they've instead helped to forge into unbreakable strength. Fourth, they saw dangerous authenticity. Not the performance of strength that collapses under real pressure, not the pretense of courage that crumbles when genuinely tested, not the appearance of confidence that dissolves when seriously challenged, but the quiet, unshakable authenticity that emerges when all the masks have been stripped away by battles too, demanding for anything less than the whole, unvarnished truth of who you are and what you're capable of becoming. This dangerous authenticity terrifies the demons because it eliminates their ability to exploit the gaps between who you pretend to be and who you actually are, between the image you project and the reality you know, between the self you present to others and the self you see in your most honest moments of private reckoning with your own heart. These gaps have always been their favorite hiding places, the shadows within which they conceal their most effective weapons, the cracks through which they insert their most poisonous doubts and most paralyzing fears about being exposed as less than the image you've worked so hard to maintain. But authentic strength needs no image to maintain. Genuine courage requires no performance to sustain. Real confidence demands no pretense to uphold. The demons can still attack from external angles, can still challenge with outside forces, can still threaten with material consequences for the audacity to become more than their rigid order permits. But these external approaches lose their most devastating power against one who has eliminated the internal divisions, the psychological splits, the gaps between appearance and reality that have always been the demon's most fertile ground for sowing the seeds of self-doubt, self-sabotage, and self-betrayal that accomplish what external opposition alone could never achieve. These four qualities: unbarred conviction, reclaimed sovereignty, alchemical resilience, and dangerous authenticity create the force the demons now recognize in your eyes, the power they sense in your presence, the threat they feel in your very existence as you continue to become what few have the courage to become in a world carefully designed to keep human potential safely contained within predictable, manageable boundaries. This recognition explains their retreat, clarifies their hesitation, illuminates their fear when facing what you're becoming, despite everything they've done to prevent exactly this development in the unfolding story of who you are and what you're capable of contributing to a world desperately, in need of the very qualities you forged through direct confrontation with the forces aligned against such forging. But their retreat creates a critical moment of choice. Their hesitation presents a pivotal decision point. Their fear opens a rare opportunity that few are offered and fewer still have the wisdom to seize when it appears before them. Will you mistake their retreat for final victory and relax the very vigilance that forced their withdrawal? Will you misinterpret their hesitation as permanent defeat and surrender the very qualities that cause their uncertainty? Will you misunderstand their fear as conclusive evidence that the battle is over, rather than entering a new, more subtle, more demanding phase that will test whether you truly own what you've demonstrated, or merely borrowed temporary strength that will fade when the immediate pressure eases? Or will you recognize this moment for what it truly is? Not an ending, but a graduation. Not a conclusion, but an initiation. Not a final victory, but an advancement to the next level of the eternal game between human potential and the forces that would contain it within comfortable boundaries that protect the established order from the disruption that always accompanies genuine growth. This graduation, this initiation, this advancement comes with both greater freedom and greater responsibility, with both expanded possibility and elevated standards, with both increased power and intensified accountability for how that power is directed, focused, and applied in a world where power without purpose creates exactly the conditions the demons exploit for their continued influence over human affairs. The force they recognize in your eyes isn't given to you for your comfort, for your convenience, for your personal benefit alone, in a world where billions remain trapped within limitations. They've been convinced are the immutable boundaries of what's possible. It's entrusted to you for purpose beyond yourself, for impact larger than your individual concerns, for contribution that extends beyond your personal circumstances to touch others still struggling against the same demons you forced into temporary retreat through qualities they cannot comprehend and therefore have learned to fear. This purpose, this impact, this contribution doesn't require grand gestures, doesn't demand global platforms, doesn't necessitate famous names or recognized positions within the existing structures of worldly power and influence. It requires only the courage to live from these four qualities in whatever arena you occupy. The commitment to embody these principles in whatever domain you influence. The consistency to maintain these standards in whatever territory you inhabit as you move through a world desperately in need of living examples that demonstrate what's possible beyond the limitations most have accepted, unchangeable boundaries of human capability. Because here's what the demons understand that explains their fear of what they've seen in your eyes. Nothing threatens their power more directly than the walking evidence that their most fundamental assumptions about human limitations are wrong. Nothing challenges their authority more completely than the living proof that their most basic premises about human capacity are false. Nothing undermines their influence more thoroughly than the embodied demonstration that their most essential claims about human potential are lies dressed as reasonable limits to protect us from the dangers of hoping for, working toward, and believing in possibilities beyond what their carefully maintained order can safely contain. You've become this evidence, this proof, this demonstration. not through grand declarations or public claims that would trigger the ego's vulnerability to the demon's most subtle weapons of pride, attachment to image, and the fear of falling short of one's own pronouncements, but through the quiet, consistent embodiment of qualities they cannot fake, cannot compromise, cannot diminish without your cooperation, in the form of choices that would betray what you've discovered about who you truly are and what you're genuinely capable of becoming when you refuse all invitations to be less than the force they now recognize in your eyes. This is why they retreat for now, why they hesitate in this moment, why they fear what they've glimpsed in the depths of your unspoken knowing about truths they've worked since the dawn of human consciousness to keep hidden beneath comfortable lies about what's realistic, what's reasonable, what's possible for beings they'd prefer to keep safely contained within predictable boundaries. The demons retreat, but the question remains, will you advance? Not in arrogance, which would simply open different doors for their re-entry into territories they never truly surrender without exhausting every possible approach to maintaining their influence. Not in judgment of others still struggling against challenges you've overcome, which would merely create new divisions they could exploit through different vulnerabilities than those you've closed through your hard-won development. Not in rigid certainty that mistakes your discoveries for final truths, rather than early steps on a journey of endless growth, which would only establish new limitations they could use as future boundaries once you'd settled comfortably within them. But in the humble confidence of one who has seen enough to know how much remains unseen, in the grounded certainty of one who has discovered enough to recognize how much awaits further discovery, in the quiet strength of one who has overcome enough to understand how much growth still calls from just beyond the current horizon of your expanding awareness. Will you advance in this spirit, with this awareness, from this foundation of qualities forged through direct confrontation with forces that have shaped human development since we first dared to imagine possibilities beyond what mere survival demanded of our earliest ancestors? The world awaits your answer, not in words, which come easily and cost little, but in choices that reflect either alignment with or betrayal of what the demons already recognize in you, fear in you, or respect in you, despite their eternal opposition to the emergence of exactly these qualities in beings. They've worked tirelessly to convince of limitations that serve their purposes rather than the fuller expression of human potential. When demons retreat, the space they vacate doesn't remain empty for long. Either you fill it with your continued advance into territories of capability, contribution, and purpose beyond their carefully maintained boundaries, or they return to reclaim familiar ground temporarily conceded, but never truly surrendered without exhausting every possible avenue for maintaining their influence over the human journey toward greater expression of our inherent potential. The choice stands before you now, as it has always stood before those who glimpse, even momentarily, what becomes possible when the force that makes demons retreat has been recognized, claimed, and embodied as the natural expression of who you've always been beneath the accumulated layers of doubt, fear, and artificial limitation those very demons have worked so diligently to convince you are the unchangeable boundaries of what's possible. Will you continue to embody the unborrowed conviction, reclaimed sovereignty, alchemical resilience, and dangerous authenticity that forced their retreat in the first place? Or will you settle for temporary victory, momentary respite, brief celebration of battles won, while the larger war for human potential continues unabated all around you? The demons have recognized something in your eyes that made them retreat against their deepest instincts and longest habits. The only remaining question is whether you'll fully recognize, completely claim, and consistently embody what they've already seen in you, already feared in you, already respected in you, despite their eternal opposition to the emergence of exactly these qualities in a world they've worked since the dawn of human consciousness to keep safely contained within the predictable boundaries of the expected, the ordinary, the manageable middle that threatens nothing and changes nothing. They've shown you who you are through their retreat more clearly than any victory celebration could possibly reveal. Will you become it fully? The demons await your answer. Not in words, but in choices that either confirm their worst fears about what you're becoming, or validate their ancient confidence that temporary victories rarely translate into lasting transformation without the kind of commitment few maintain. Once the immediate pressure eases and the comfort of familiar limitations beckons with its siren song of reasonable compromise and practical acceptance of reality as they've defined it, the force they recognize in your eyes has always been there. The only question is whether you'll recognize it too, claim it fully, and direct it purposefully in a world waiting for exactly what you've already proven exists within you through the simple yet extraordinary fact that you still stand at all after everything you've endured on the journey to this pivotal moment of choice between continued advance or subtle retreat, disguised as reasonable rest, before the next engagement in humanity's oldest and most consequential battle. Choose well. The demons are watching, and so is everyone still waiting for living proof that their own demons can be forced into retreat by the same force now recognized in your eyes.